Good evening and welcome to the Kim B. Davis Show. I'm your host, Kim B. Davis, and this evening it is my pleasure to introduce Shanae Watson Whitaker. She is our political analyst, strategist, organizer, expert, all those things political. She is the person to go to. Good evening, Shanae. How are you?
I am okay, Kimberly. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. So, we got to continue this conversation about women in politics. So this is Women in Politics Part 2.
Yes.
So, 2020, when this year is over, everybody's like 2020 is going to become a curse word because it's like every time you think that we've reached a new low in 2020, it seems to break that record. And I don't know how you felt, but I was shocked. I was honestly shocked. I should not be surprised. So shame on me because we live in America, in a country that is seething right now in political unrest. However, to hear of a plan and a plot to kidnap the governor from the great state of Michigan, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and then to hear that the state of Virginia's Governor Ralph Northam, was also a potential target. I thought, oh my goodness, what is happening? Where are we? Is this America of 2020? Or is this an alternate reality and, we're all having a nightmare and we can't wake up? What are your thoughts?
Ooh, it's a hot mess. I wanted to say hot mess, yeah. But it's a hot mess. I mean, we're at it's terrible that what's going on with Governor Northam and with Governor Whitmer, and the cherry on top, especially here in Michigan, was that the elected officials that are in the opposite side of the aisle, they actually stood with these people before they allegedly committed these wanted to plot and scheme and do whatever. And then you have one of the law enforcement, Mr. Fear. Mm-hmm. He kind of gave justification for their behavior. So that's scary. I mean, we have a problem here in Michigan with militia groups and what I'm going to just call them what they are, terrorist groups here.
Yes. Absolutely.
And under the guise of militias, because they look at the Constitution, so they think they're a well-regulated militia. No, they are not. Mm-hmm. They're a bunch of white supremacists. I just call them, KKK rebranded.
Yes.
So, these are scary times. And then we have a president that told them to stand back and stand by, to the Proud Boys, which gives basically a wink and a nod to whatever they're doing. And now you're hearing stories of voter intimidation tactics in Florida with the Proud Boys, emailing voters in Florida, mm-hmm. Telling them to register as a Republican and to vote for Trump. So we are in some times right now, and I'm worried about people, but I hope we stand strong and stand up together against this kind of behavior and push back on it.
I'm with you because there are two other incidents that I read about earlier this week. There's one in Florida where there's a company that essentially is intimidating its employees, saying that if you do not vote for Trump and Trump does not win, you will lose your job. That was the first thing. And that was a company manufacturing, I believe it's like a defense contractor out of Florida. The second one that I heard was in Tennessee, I believe it was. Mm-hmm. If you had a Biden-Harris sign in your yard, the Ku Klux Klan left family visit cards. I thought, wow, is this where we really are?
Mm-hmm. We're going backwards. It seems like Trump has brought out the worst in people. And you wouldn't think that the Klan, like I said, mm-hmm. to me, militia groups are just a rebranded form of the Klan. But them to come out the woodwork in Tennessee, in places like Tennessee, that's crazy. And again, it's reflective of the leadership at the top with Trump and his enablers and his sycophants, the people around him, his yes people. Mm-hmm. So, we just have to vote. Come out to vote and bring our friends and family and encourage them to vote too. Something we call vote tripling. So you say I'm voting, so you please bring 3 people with you, and You say, okay, these are the names of the 3 people that are voting. So, and they go vote. And then you tell them to do the same thing. That's what we need to do.
Absolutely. Go vote, bring a friend, bring several friends with you.
Make it a party.
That's right. You know, it's interesting because I listen to people talk about the right to vote and why it's important and why some people don't feel like that. And when you look at people, specifically these terrorists, because I agree with you, they are absolutely that. This is the same vein, just like in Oklahoma City bombing and other areas. I forget where it was in Texas that they had the raid, and that was the militia group. And
Waco. Correct.
Waco, Texas. We saw it when President Obama was in office. What was it, South Dakota? Or was someplace they had taken over the city hall and were staging a protest. And we see this continuously across the country. What frightens me is that in Michigan, we have 5 beautiful lakes and you can travel all over where you want to. And I've heard several personal stories where people have said, you know, we were out on the water because we're still in COVID and it's still a pandemic. And so people are still social distancing, and people were taking a trip and they would hear gunfire. And they said it sounded like a training camp. So I'm just saying this is happening right in our backyard.
And it's enabled by the president himself and his administration, who turned a blind eye to this and then use a coded language to reach out to these people because they happen to support him and they have the same racist views, probably even more extreme than Trump. So, you know, again, with the militia groups and voter intimidation, what they're doing is as old as this country is. It happened in Reconstruction with Black folks, and they're doing it again. They're doing it in the South. There was a police officer in Miami who had a Trump Pence mask, and he was at a voting location. So that's another form of voter intimidation. And you have a poll tax in Florida, and we can talk about Florida all day. A poll tax there, where people who have served their sentences, they cannot vote until they pay a fine. That's an equivalent of a poll tax. So we have voter suppression techniques from our government, from these groups out there, and they're meant to do the same, do one thing, and that's to beat down our turnout and to make sure that their candidate wins elected office. Absolutely. And it's a shame. That's awful. That's awful. We shouldn't have to go back to that. It's crazy.
We shouldn't. I mean, you had poll taxes, you had tests that you had to take. You had to determine if you could actually read something to understand it, to actually be able to vote. You had to prove who you are, which, you know, it's unfortunate, but we're back at that point again, where now we're talking about licenses and what type of identification that you can have and how much information do you actually need to have to go and cast your vote.
Correct.
And people being challenged at the polls where they're being told, you're not registered here to vote. And they're like, I have not moved. I have lived in the same residence for 15, 20 years. What are you talking about? And people having to defend themselves and jump through hoops just to cast their ballot. It seems that it is just 2020 is just a crazy year, and I can't wait till 2021. I'm hoping that things will get better. We'll see once our election goes through what happens. But I want to pivot a little bit because I think it's interesting, especially in Michigan, because we are talking about women in politics. And I think that women legislators are judged differently than men. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Because Governor Gretchen Whitmer was taken to court and the Republicans sued to strip her power, saying that she was going above and beyond, issuing an emergency executive order to protect people. And I know we have this conversation about the mask and going on in America and why it's unfair. And some people have compared it to slavery, which I just abhor when I hear people say that. I'm like, you have no idea what slavery is if you're comparing that to wearing a mask. You know, someone else said, if, and I have small children, I know your children are grown, and we talked about that the last time you were on, but if my children have to go through active shooter drills, the least that you can do is wear a mask. And I just find it ironic that the Republican controlled legislature went after her for that particular power. And so now we see in the United States across the board, cases are increasing again. People are dying, and they're saying that the rural areas are really facing a shortage of help, resources, beds, just like what you saw in the urban areas earlier when this first came through. And they said the second wave is always the worst. And whenever we look back at 1918, the Spanish flu, we see that when the second wave came back and it hit the African American community, it hit them very, very hard. And I'm just wondering, because in Virginia, Governor Ralph Northam issued similar directives, stating that you had to wear a mask, that every business could not operate or do anything unless you wore a mask. And it's funny, I don't see the same action being placed against him. Now, I know that this happened a few years ago in Wisconsin, that this was a tactic to try to take control away from the Democrats. But as we sort of always say, it's okay until the rabbit gets the gun. So now it's sort of like, oh, wait, now if we don't figure out how to do this, the rabbit now has the gun, and the rabbit is issuing orders and doing things, and we don't like it. And so we got to switch the game up again. Talk to me a little bit about what your thoughts are.
There is sexism involved with Governor Whitmer. I was looking at both houses and the leadership in both chambers, and how resistant they are, and how some members of the legislature actually associated or stood on stage with these people. So there's a level of that. They had lock her up chants. You had Trump with the lock her up chants in Muskegon the other day. So yes, there is sexism, and sexism to me is older than racism. So, because sexism goes across racial boundaries.
Yeah.
And the way that they talk about her and the way that they treat her, it's awful to see. And again, you talked about Ralph Northam. I know there was a plot against him, but you didn't see Trump attack him.
Exactly.
You didn't see him attacking the Wisconsin governors, but he is on Governor Whitmer. And it's just so apparent that there's sexism there, and it's allowed, and it's tolerated for politics, for the political sake of one-upmanship, And I don't understand it, but I do understand it. Again, that's a part of like this whole white male patriarchy structure that they want to keep in place, and they're threatened by a powerful woman, even if she is a white woman. They're threatened by her because it changes their power dynamic and makes those people who can't get to where she is look less successful than she is. And I think there's also jealousy in there. She's popular. People like her. They like what she's doing. They like the job that how she's led during COVID, and the response, and how she has just been able to work with her public health officials to make sure that the rates are low. And now we're seeing the uptick since, the state Supreme Court, which is another pivotal election, decide against her and in favor based on political lines with the Republicans there. So now like you said, we're seeing the uptick in COVID cases in the rural areas. And what people don't understand is this: they don't have those supplies. They don't have those ventilators that they need. So guess where they come to? Where do they bring these people to? Down to the metropolitan areas where there's more room and space for them if they're able to travel. So we're also going to suffer with this second wave. And you have people in there who are still in denial about it because of what 45 says, and still in denial about it because they think, well, it's not me that's going to die. It's going to be the Black and brown people that are going to die. Right. But they don't understand that these people, the people who are impacted the most, are rural people who don't have access to those benefits as well, just like people in our urban areas that are poorer. So it's going to impact everybody. And I just wish that people would get beyond the political, upmanship, gamesmanship, and say, we are all Americans, we are all in this together, and move forward and get healthy together. But what Gretchen Whitmer is going through is just, it's unheard of. I've never seen like such resistance to a woman governor, a woman leader like this. And I stand by what she's done. And I think, again, she's done a wonderful job with this, and she's been dealt a bad hand, and she's just rocking it. And people want to stop her power because they want to stop her popularity. Mm-hmm. If you stop her popularity, her numbers go down. Her numbers go down. She's more politically vulnerable. She's more politically vulnerable in 2022. You can run against her and possibly win. So that's what this is about. It's not about freedom or anything. It's about politics and playing games
and power
and keeping power. Yes.
And see, that's why I had you to come back on the show, because I knew you could break it down for us. But I want to go back to something that you said, because we haven't really talked about it. So I don't remember at this point when it was. I want to say this was a couple months ago. This is October now. I believe it was in the summer, before they went on recess, where you had all these different militia people and different protesters with guns who flooded the Capitol. And they were literally where the legislators are, up in the balcony, all around the Capitol. And you see the security and the Michigan State Police and the Capitol Guards, all these people are standing, and these people are yelling at them in their face with their guns. And I know several legislators who were tweeting pictures and saying, yes, this is how I had to come to work today. Not only do you see the protesters with their very large guns, but you see the legislators in body armor where they have on bulletproof vests. And then you have other legislators, because they were in fear because threats have been lodged against people for a variety of reasons. They brought in their own security, where people who look like us said, I'm going to escort such and such to this seat and do this so that they are protected. And it was quite stunning to me. And I'm sorry, I don't recall the gentleman's name, but he was a legislator who got mad at the governor and basically issued a statement and said, why didn't you say anything to us? Because they were plotting against us. And I was screaming at the TV, because she can't trust you. Who does she trust? Because you all in the state of Michigan were having this conversation. Why are we allowing guns where we make laws? And I know that in this country, we love to hold up the Second Amendment and say we have a right to bear arms. There's a whole argument that could be made for what that actually means. It doesn't just mean that you just get to walk around and intimidate people with guns. However, I just think that it was a foolish and a weak move. And I use that word intentionally, because anytime you have to use force to voice your opinion or to show your opinion, you've already lost the argument. That's just how I look at things. And it's, it's very visible to see that these people just are grasping at straws. And I listened to one of the plotters, one of the terrorists, and he was saying, if you are allowing these people to talk, I don't want to have anything to do with you. If I come across you, you better go, because I'm going to kill you. And he kept saying how these people are the enemy of the state, and he's tired of being a slave to the government and these people robbing him. And I'm just listening to him. And Shanae, honestly, I was like, what are you talking about? But while I'm watching this video, I see his ears, and he has those circular discs in his ears where he stretched his ears out. And I said, don't you realize that you're doing Black behavior? That's a tribal African custom. Do you understand what that's for? But now you're telling people that you've been oppressed and you want to create a white ethno state. Make it make sense, Shanae.
Ain't no making sense with that there. You know that. And these same people that the terrorists were all up in the stands too. I mean, I saw the pictures as well. A couple of the representatives I know personally, and they were scared. They were scared. All they do is do their jobs. And then you had, and then people didn't really talk about it, you had some of the state police hanging out with them too.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about that and law enforcement and how these people infiltrate law enforcement as well. So there's a problem. It should never have to come to that. It was all good when, you know what I'm saying, when they were in the Capitol intimidating Democrats. But
Right.
now that, you know, Governor Whitmer was threatened and all of a sudden you were threatened anyway, then it's a problem. But it's about politics, and they were politically expedient to these people to make a statement and to rile up their base earlier this year. And now that it's kicking them in the behind, now they want to say, oh, we don't have anything to do with them, and we don't know what you're talking about. And, you know, well, you should have told us what happened if I was threatened to. Please.
Right.
They knew this was about Governor Whitmer. They knew, they saw the dolls, the effigies that were going on. They saw the signs. Some of the members of the GOP, they give these people the signs. You know how it goes. They caravan people from throughout the state to come up and to show up with signs. Some of them are activists within the party to say that they're like some individual person from a random citizen, which is not true. They're party activists, and they have these signs. Even what happened with the council, the person from Ferndale Commission that passed away, or Royal Oak, I forget. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
She was a part of that group too. She was a part of that group, and it made it seem like she was an average person. No, she is a party activist. She was a part of that. It's all political to these people. All they care about is winning, and they will use anybody and any tactic to further their agenda, which doesn't even help the people like that man, who's obviously, he's out there, but it doesn't help his quality of life get better. It doesn't help any of us. It's about the 1% that they serve, that Shirky serves, and that Tristan Cole serves. That's all they care about, and the people who line their pockets. That's it. These people out here, these militia groups, they're just tools in the trade. That's all.
And it's very sad. So I want to move on because quickly just so we can keep up with time. So we had a vice presidential debate that was interesting, and I know you got a chance to watch it. What were your thoughts on how the debate progressed? Was it better than the first presidential debate, or?
Better, much better, much better. And I know that Kamala Harris won that debate. She was substantive. She held her own. Mike Pence, he came across as patronizing, as a know-it-all, and arrogant, and like you can't tell he doesn't have a wrong answer for anything. And then he swooned over the talking points. He really didn't talk about COVID. Talked about the economy before COVID, not what's going on now that impacts people, especially our community, disproportionately. And one thing that warmed my heart was when Kamala Harris mentioned renters and mentioned eviction. 8 million Americans are facing eviction. That's talking about poverty. I mean, 8 million Americans are in poverty now too. So that really won it for me. She did a great job handling him. And when she said, I am speaking, I was like, yes, yes. Yes, and she set herself up to make her points, and she even gave a history lesson about Abraham Lincoln and what happened before the next election, and how he waited until after the election, and then he had his Supreme Court justice nominated. So it was a great debate on her behalf. She didn't have to stoop to the level, and then Mr. Fly Sean did his thing and Pence's hair, because flies are attracted to two things: sugar and.
Yes, that's right. So, the not nice one.
So that was cool, and she mentioned in her interview on the station that she saw it in his hair and just laughed about it, and she just like.
It was. It was an interesting moment. I agree with everything that you said. I absolutely thought she was substantive. I thought that she spoke to the issues, that she really connected with the American people. What I also thought was interesting was the after show, where people were commenting and making the memes and doing the faces. And I said, what is it about the faces that women make that have become so popular? Is this still a byproduct of sexism? Because we don't see that necessarily unless it's a man crying. Correct. So it seems like, you're trying to feminize a man when he does something like that. But for her, you know, the number one meme, of course, was "I'm speaking," which, you know, I thought every woman who's ever had a man overtalk her, she was like, yes, yes, because he was doing that. And you know, I saw him as being rude. And if you're supposed to be the person that shows what the administration is really all about, you didn't show that because you did a repeat. The only thing you didn't do was shout. Um, what do you think about that in terms of what was said about Kamala Harris afterwards?
Yes, I saw the memes too, and I thought about that as well. I think that there is an element to sexism in it, but also she just, to be honest with you, a lot of us Black women are demonstrative. We can't hide our feelings in our face. We try on the best we can, but we just can't do it. I don't have a poker face, so
I don't either.
If I'm pissed off, you'll see my face being pissed off. If I'm happy the same way. But I get it. We don't focus on male candidates' facial expressions. We don't. We usually focus on whatever they have to say or what they don't say. The only time I can remember one was when George W. Bush looked at his phone. I mean, his watch. Yeah. But that was just because it was so obvious that it was rude, that made it, that actually impacted the election. But besides that, her faces, yeah, that's a part of sexism too. That is. And you know, I hope one day we get past it, or if we don't get past it, we do the same thing with men candidates when they run for office. We didn't do it with President Obama. He's made some faces.
Yes, he has. He absolutely has. Because I would crack him up like, oh, I know what that look is about. So now I want to pivot to the next hot topic that's currently burning up all across social media. So over the weekend, we learned that rapper, actor, I guess he's calling himself political activist now, Ice Cube, came out with a contract with Black America and floated it to the Democrats and floated it to the Republicans, Trump and Pence. And apparently Trump and Pence bit and called it the Platinum Plan and did some tweaking and some other things. And Ice Cube was joined by 50 Cent, I think it was on Sunday or Monday, and both are getting dragged across social media. There's been lots and lots of debate about this being something that's radical, that's new. And I know you know this, that Tavis Smiley came up with a covenant with Black America. He wrote a book about it. He had a whole television series and debate style system on C-SPAN. Before that, you had something similar that was done in the 90s. And before that, you had Dick Gregory running around talking about what was needed for the Black community. So I'm not knocking Ice Cube or 50 Cent for wanting to do that. What I am disappointed in is the fact that you thought that it was going to go somewhere and you did not have the community behind you like I thought that you should, where there should have been a cross section of entertainers, philosophers, business people, corporate, nonprofit, activists, all of that, to be able to come and say, we support this plan. Do you agree with me? What are your thoughts?
I think that both 50 Cent and Ice Cube do not represent Black America. I think that both of them, with Ice Cube, let me just be real. He has money. He has his big three organization tied up with Qatari money. That Qatari money is tied to, that man is a Trump supporter.
That's right.
And works with Steve Bannon. So it's all about the money for him. When he was on Roland Martin's show and he was asked about this plan, his whole boy didn't even read it. He don't know what he's saying. And plus it was also Black male centered. So the goal was with Ice Cube. Well, I don't know what conversations were had, and I'm not going to assume that, but the goal with Ice Cube is to tamp down the Black male vote. If you tamp it down enough and they don't show up to the polls, Trump has a better chance at winning. So it's all about that. I mean, and I don't mind athletes and entertainers speaking about political issues. I don't consider them my leaders either. But at the same time, when you pop it out the woodward on October 16th or October 17th, whatever date it was, and you present a plan, and then we know that you have money that's backed up with this, then you're suspect as hell. So he's suspect. And then when it comes to 50 Cent, 50 Cent is, God bless him, you know, he makes his money, but he's all about his paper. He has never been about Black people. So he can go on with himself and handle his business. But I have nothing to add to him. He's just too much anyway. He reminds me of Donald Trump in a lot of ways. He's arrogant, thinks he knows it all, thinks he's better than everybody, will crap on people because they don't have as much money as him and make fun of people. And and he's just a showman. He's a showman. He knows what makes him money. You know, I won't knock it at all, but at the same time, he's about his paper. He's not about his people.
Absolutely. Well said. I couldn't say it any better than that. And when I found out that the Big Three Basketball League and then his music company were actually part, as you said, the Qatari businessmen, which when you think about Qatar, you have all that money that flows through there, but then you got to follow the money and see who else is connected to. And I believe his last name is Quinnett, that gentleman is best friends with Steve Bannon. So I find that very ironic. I find it ironic that Trump and Pence would think that calling it the Platinum Plan was a good idea, because I said that's an insult against all Black people.
It sure is. I mean, come on now. Come on. The Platinum Plan, like, come on. Are we in the early 2000s now? Come on.
Are we in the 80s? Like, oh, it's platinum. You know, this is cool. Like, you know, we all walking around wearing big gold ropes in the early days of hip hop. I'm like, you need to stop. But I agree with you. Ice Cube and 50 Cent do not represent Black America in terms of what our viewpoints are.
50 Cent is nothing but a remix of Don King. He's the Don King of rap. That's it.
See, now I can't get that out of my head. That's a visual now that I have. But so someone asked me this question, and I want to ask you, why is it that it seems like we only have entertainers that are at the forefront pushing these issues instead of the people who are actually doing the work? The corporate citizens, the nonprofit organizations, the community activists, authors like myself. It seems like when you get to that platform, you're pushed away for someone else like an Ice Cube or 50 Cent who has that sort of splash. Because even with LeBron James, with some of the things that he says, he still gets pushed back. And it's interesting. I'm like, but he's a basketball player. He should be able to still sort of navigate that, but it doesn't seem like it. So, you know, I know what the answer is, but I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are.
I think that people have a tendency to infantilize Black people and think that we can be moved by shiny objects.
Yeah.
And it's soft bigotry, and and again, people treat us like children. I could talk about LeBron James. I think that he's one of them that doesn't do that. I think he puts his money where his mouth is, especially in Florida with what he's done with donating hundreds of thousands of dollars to pay for felons, returning citizens, former felons, returning citizens, to pay those fines. He doesn't go out there saying, I'm a leader. No, but I'm very offended by the people who are in entertainment who don't have a connection with people who are on the ground doing the work, speaking for us, especially when I know that they wouldn't even be seen in my hood. You know,
exactly right.
They don't do the work. They don't understand that the hardships that people are facing. And if they did understand it, they've left that life and they're not into the community. This is not like a Harry Belafonte or Dick Gregory, like you said, when they're entrenched in the politics of the community. These are people who will just, speak from somebody passes them a mic and they think they can speak for all Black folk.
Right.
I'd rather have our religious leaders speak than an entertainer, because at least they have a church, so they're constantly interacting with their congregation, so they have an understanding of what's going on immediately around them.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Shanae, our time, we only have a couple more minutes. Tell us where we can reach you, and thank you again for coming on and breaking all of this down for us.
Well, again, if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. It's La Femme LAF as in Frank, EMME _ Negrita, NEGRITA at Twitter. I love the movie La Femme Nikita, so I had to take that, take that little thing and just flip it a little bit.
Very cool.
So yes, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter. Well, really not supposed to be because I work it, but but I do respond to people on Twitter when I have the chance, and I'm not working. I am on Twitter. So
this is a busy season because we are about 2 weeks out from elections, and getting the vote out, getting that message, making sure that people have their absentee ballots, making sure that people are prepared and know that they can vote is very important. So we thank you for doing that and nurturing that and continuing to just stand up, even though you may not get the shiny headlights that other people get. We applaud you for that.
That's all right. I like working behind the scenes. And I'd like to add to people to make a plan to vote. Bring your friends with you. There are websites out there that people can use to track their ballot or to find out who's running for office. I would implore people to use those resources and to bring people with you to the polls. I would normally say, if you're going to vote by mail, bring your ballot to your city clerk or your city clerk's office or your county clerk's office. I love the Postal Service, but I would not go that route. Right. Bring it in. And it is too late. Go in person to vote. Mask up if you have to. You know what I'm saying? Wear protective gear. Do what you have to do. Just get your vote counted and make sure you're active. And this is the chance where you can make a statement in the direction of our democracy.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shanae, for being on the Kim B. Davis Show. It is always a pleasure. I look forward to talking to you after the election because I'm sure that we will have lots and lots to talk about. It may be a while before a winner is decided because I'm thinking it's going to be contested and there's going to be a lot of issues that we may have to dig through. But I look forward to having that conversation. And thank you again for being on the Kim B. Davis Show.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you for having me, and have a great day.
I will. Thank you guys for taking another opportunity to tune in and listen to the Kim B. Davis Show. I hope to see you on our next episode. And as always, be magnificent.